An $800,000 loan from the bank at 3% will cost you $24,000 in interest. Now, over 30 years, you're going to pay $414,000 worth of interest back to the bank on top of the amount that you originally borrowed. So, you don't like the idea of paying interest to the bank. I get it. But increasingly, you're possibly also wondering if you could be doing better overall by investing somewhere else instead. Now, repaying your mortgage and minimizing the amount of interest that you pay over time is extremely important. So I'm not about to tell you what you should or you shouldn't do in this video. But if you have 20 years or more to run on your mortgage, I think that you should be looking at both sides of the debate here so that you can be more certain of which side of the fence is right for you to be standing on. So in this video, I'll be covering the opportunity cost of aggressive mortgage repayment compared to investing elsewhere, how some types of mortgage reduction can be considered a type of investment, and when it's the right time to really put the hammer down on that death pledge that we call a mortgage. Cool, so if you are new to this channel, I cover mainstream investing topics like KiwiSaver, managed funds, investing in property, crypto, and much more. So remember to like and to subscribe and to click on that notification bell to be informed every time that I put out a new video like this. Firstly, what's the opportunity cost of aggressive mortgage repayment compared to investing? I want to share a simple example of what an additional $1,000 per month paid towards a 30-year, $800,000 mortgage looks like at 3% compared to investing $1,000 per month for 30 years at an average compounding rate of return of 10%. Firstly, $800,000 at 3% requires $3,372 per month to fully repay the debt in 30 years. An extra $1,000 per month, or $4,372 per month, shaves almost 10 years off your mortgage term and saves you just over $143,000 in interest payments in the process. Now that sounds pretty good, right? But let's take it a step further. In 20 years, when you're debt-free, let's take that $4,372 per month and invest it into a well-diversified index fund returning 10%. 10 years later, you'd have around $900,000 in this fund. Plus, you would have saved a good chunk of interest expense in the process. Not bad, right? But what if you kept the payments at a minimum and now you're debt-free in 30 years instead of 20? Your payments are lower at $3,372 per month, so the additional $1,000 per month instead can be invested. At the end of the 30-year period of investing $1,000 per month at an average rate of return of 10%, you'd have around $2.28 million. Now, our natural tendency is to avoid paying interest to the man, but in some cases, this can actually cost you far more as you're foregoing the right to double your overall return, as highlighted in that example. As demonstrated, you'd be probably over $1 million better off by investing that amount that you would otherwise be able to direct towards more aggressive mortgage repayment. So depending on your attitude towards taking risk, your expectations around your personal income in the future, and your cash flow requirements during retirement, how you view mortgage repayment as part of an overall investment strategy is really important. Yes, there's a lot of reasons why aggressive mortgage repayment may be right for you. But in some situations, I think you could almost consider it an investment strategy. Now, what do I mean by this? Let's take mortgage debt associated with rental properties as an example. Let's assume that the interest expense isn't tax deductible here. Consider the following. If the interest rate is 3% and assuming a tax rate of 25%, you're in fact generating a tax-adjusted rate of return of 3.75% on every dollar that goes towards reducing your loan amount. Now, before you think 3.75%, that's not really a very good return, is it? Consider this. What's a reasonable rate of return on a typical bond fund or term deposit? It's actually pretty good, isn't it? So when you have a mortgage, you're just on the other side of a bond. You receive the money, and now you're making a series of payments back to the bondholder, the bank. Just like investing in bonds, mortgage repayments are a low-risk, conservative investment strategy. Now, it's low risk, but it's not no risk. Because when you repay a debt of any sort, think of that as an investment which cannot be reversed easily. This is because your ability to extract equity from property is subject to something that you cannot control: bank lending criteria. This illiquidity risk means that you really need to consider other things that you may need money for before you drop it on the mortgage, especially if the lending environment is getting more restrictive. Now, unlike investing in the share market, you don't have the benefits of high liquidity or diversification. Now, if you want to learn more about diversification versus concentration as an investment strategy, be sure to watch this video on the screen now. But being able to convert your property equity into cash is an important consideration that you need to make when designing your own strategy, and having your eggs in more than one basket can really be helpful when you're operating in an incredibly uncertain environment. Although interest rates can change over time, the amount that you can save by aggressive mortgage repayments is in fact finite. Investing in the share market, even through a diversified index fund, carries significantly higher risk of loss, but as compensation for this uncertainty, you get a much higher return, a return that has the potential, at least, to be significantly higher than the interest that you're saving on the mortgage. If you can lower your average risk around your core strategy, in some cases you may be able to justify taking on board higher risk in your smaller satellites. Now, core, satellites, wondering what I'm talking about? Then check out the video on the screen later to learn more about that topic. Now, if you forego aggressive debt repayment in favor of investing more, you're engaging in a form of borrowing to invest. As can be seen easily through the lens of a property investor, borrowing money or using leverage greatly amplifies property market returns over time. But the same thing can happen in the share market too. Just remember that shares do go up and down in value quite dramatically relative to property. So remember to invest as you are, and only proceed with investing when you have confidence that you know how you'll react when this volatility hits you. All right, so here's the moral hazard part of the show, if you like, or the bit where I throw down the disclaimer again. Don't act on any of these perspectives. It's only designed to get you to think, and is not a good substitute at all for getting your own financial advice. Your parents and your grandparents probably would have preached the gospel of mortgage repayment before investing. For the most part, many proponents of this strategy may now be debt-free, but like any concentrated investor who piles money into an illiquid investment, this can create cash flow problems at some stage in the future. Perhaps the strategy of mortgage elimination before aggressive investing may work at some stage in the future, so we can't totally rule it out, but arguably it hasn't really served the older generation that well, nor is it good advice for all everyday investors to follow today blindly. Those who have prioritized property investment or investing in funds or other investments in the last 20 years over prioritizing mortgage reduction could actually be in significantly better positions today as a result. And here's the awful truth as to why this may be the case. By the way, if you're a Marxist, block your ears here. But the gains in capital beat the fruits of labor every day. If you're reliant on building a retirement solely off the back of your after-tax income, using aggressive debt repayment and savings as your primary vehicles, you could end up far behind those who engaged in the great arbitrage of trading depreciating dollars for appreciating assets earlier on. Now, if you wanted to, you can use that truth to your advantage. Money is like a moth to a flame. It always gravitates towards the highest returns for the most tolerable levels of risk. Central banks around the world have artificially suppressed the cost of money and injected far more of it into the system. The result? Well, almost every market in the world has inflated to levels not seen before. It may seem great, but this has had some side effects, good and bad. For those otherwise heading towards retirement poverty, it's actually a cure. However, we can't ignore the inequality that this also causes. There's always existed this great arbitrage, though, between borrowing and investing, so this isn't new. In fact, the last 18 months has just made it easier to see. So, if you wanted to take advantage of what can happen by being on the best side of that great arbitrage, all you need to do is increase your investments over increasing your mortgage payments at the next opportunity. One last thought before I leave you. No one can ever save themselves wealthy. I'm all for getting out of mortgage debt eventually, but I think there's value in developing a strategy for how to do this as efficiently as possible. For the most part, the last 10 to 20 years of your 30-year mortgage may contain significantly higher levels of personal income compared to the income that you're receiving today. Relying on that assumption alone can be risky, but are you factoring that into your reality in any way, and are you incorporating that into your investment strategy? If so, the best time to engage in a low-risk investment strategy of any sort, like aggressive debt repayment, is best done when your time frames are much shorter. It's food for thought. All right, well, I hope you found that useful. That's it for this one, though. Please leave a like if you got something out of this perspective. Subscribe and click on the notification bell also to hear more. See you next time.